Welcome, everybody. This is the second of many new Inspired TVs, and I am so honored today to have my guest, Scott Chesney, who is somebody that I have known for a while, but we've never really officially met. And Scott has an amazing story, and I really wanted him to be on Inspired TV for multiple reasons, but I'm going to let you guys be the judge after this interview because really, truly, everything that I have known about you, Scott, and heard about you, Scott, has just been amazing, amazing stuff. So welcome.
Thank you, Suzanne. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, likewise. So for the people who are just tuning into Inspired TV, basically the mission of Inspired TV is about really highlighting the journey through darkness as a way to illuminate our greatest gifts and teach us the most powerful life lessons, and really sometimes eventually lead us to our purpose, our soul's purpose. So Scott, I wanted to ask you, what was for you your darkest moment?
My darkest moment. I want to say right away, my heart's telling me back when I was 24 years old. It was 1994, and it was a short time after the passing of my father. I was 24 years old, and basically 9 years into paralysis.
Wow.
And it was at that moment, the combination of the passing of my father and then just having that opportunity too to not only grieve over his passing, but really to finally grieve over my paralysis as well. And it really was at a point where I just was open to allowing everything to come to the surface. And it was a dark place. I know now that it was a place that I needed to go to. At that moment, just really didn't want to be here anymore. Didn't want to be here anymore. But I knew there was something. I'd always talked about going into a light and seeing, the brightness and things and so forth. But I had avoided darkness all too long, and it was my time. It was my time.
Wow, well said. So for people who don't know you, because a lot of people may not know your story, how did your journey begin into this darkness?
My journey began. Now I could tell you it began ever since I came out of the womb, but
Exactly.
that it's the darkness and the light. But I would basically say it was becoming paralyzed at age 15 and waking up basically with the inability to move my legs anymore. And a very rare stroke left me paralyzed from my waist down to my toes. There was no accident, no injury, no trauma. And it was you would think a very, very dark time in my life at that time. There was some darkness, but I wasn't ready to go there. And some people, when they experience adversity, challenges, right away they face that darkness. They see that darkness. For me, is that I was able to kind of go around it, circumvent it, but like anything in life, it's there waiting for you, and it waited for me for a number of years until really that backpack in which we carry all the things that we don't want to deal with right away just basically got too heavy for me. And it was time to open up that backpack and just experience all the things that had been taken away from that 15-year-old boy in every single way that he had the right to feel. Anger, hatred, depression, you name it, is that I allowed myself in my darkest moment to experience and feel all those. And again, at the moment, it felt like the end of the world. But now I know it was one of the most liberating experiences of my entire life.
So you're saying that at 15, you were able to accept the paralysis?
No, I was able to basically, well, not really stepping, I said sidestep it,
Okay.
but really avoid it. And I didn't know back then why, but I know now, being able to rewind the tape of my life and go back to any moment and kind of make sense of things and reinterpret it, as I can take myself back to when I was in that hospital bed, and each and every day, whether it be my parents, friends, or just people who had heard about me, I had dozens of eyes that were before me who basically were the size of golf balls with tears in them.
Wow.
And I know that that 15-year-old kid, and I didn't know this consciously, but subconsciously, is that 15-year-old boy was saying all that pain, all that sadness that you're experiencing is far greater than anything I could be experiencing in my life. So I know I shut it down. I shut down everything you can imagine that 15-year-old would feel, could feel, should feel. And because I said, whatever you're feeling is far greater than I'm feeling. And so I kind of went the opposite way and saying, you know what, put the smile on my face. And I had a relatively still good life. Is that I have to be an inspiration to people. I have to be happy. I got to come across as courageous because I cannot deal with all that pain that you're experiencing. It's far greater than anything that I can experience.
Wow. So at what point past the age of 15 did all of that depression, anger, fears, when did that all start to hit?
Yeah, again, it was almost like the passing of my father. It started to bring it all to the surface, and it was almost like all this that I had created outside myself, which outside of paralysis and outside of my father's passing, was an amazing life. I mean, I was living down in Miami, Florida. I had graduated college. I was making great money, relationships, all the things on paper were going great in my life. But there were still these major, major unresolved issues within me.
Right.
And it just got to the point where no matter what it is that I create outside myself, is that something's missing. I don't feel really genuinely happy. I don't feel genuinely successful. I don't feel genuinely free, and I wasn't sure what it was. And then I finally got around. I'd heard so many people, Suzanne, talk about going within, and all my mind was telling me way back then is I got to go sit in like the foothills of Dharamsala and chant and yeah, and Om and do all this. I just had this vision, this really depleted vision, this tunnel vision, and I realized all too well now what that all meant. But until I embarked upon that journey and kind of surrendered to all the limitations that my mind was putting before me, and just surrender and just kind of like just go within and don't judge it, don't criticize it, just be and allow it to come forward. And it's been wonderful ever since.
So what does going within look like, or what did it look like for you? Because I think for everybody it's different a little bit. I mean, I think the outcome is the same, but I think, that going within process for some people can look one way and for others look very different. So what was that like for you?
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. It looks different for everyone, and people ask me that, and I said, you know what, that's part of your path. I can share with you what I did, but you know what, I can't determine that that's going to be the path that looks like for you. So for me, is that I had the opportunity to take a journey around the world. I went to 15 countries in 15 months, and a mission was offered to me. Again, it didn't have to be the mission put forth, but it just resonated with me so much, and it was a journey to research alternative medicines, complementary medicines, and along those lines, I mean, I've studied 70 alternative complementary medicines to date. Along those lines was a lot of work in terms of personal development. And I remember two of my greatest teachers who still to this day are phenomenal teachers are from like total opposite sides of life. Is that there I began my entire journey with Tony Robbins, who
Yeah.
I believe is such an empowering and powerful individual, and one who I mean, he knows about going within as well, but to create that life outside of yourself and just go out there and create and whatever it is that you need to do to manifest. And
Right.
then on the opposite side of that, I spent significant time with Dr. Deepak Chopra.
Oh, wonderful.
Talks about going within and surrendering and meditation and all this. And it was just that combination, Suzanne, that just, it's what I needed. And I believe, not necessarily in the form of Tony Robbins or Deepak Chopra, but you know what, whatever is going on in our lives is that there's a polar opposite to that we need to embrace. So for me, my life was all up until that moment in my life, up until age 24, it was all about movement. Even though I was paralyzed, it was all about movement. It was all about talking.
Mm.
So I finally got around to the point is that, you know what, what's the polar opposite of that? Well, the movement is stillness, and all the talking and chatter that I'm either creating or people around me are chatting is silence. So the true healing for me, the true transformation, the true meaning of going within, it has been stillness and silence for me.
Mm.
And that's been offered up in the form of meditation, which again, I would have been the last person on earth that would have ever said, what in the world? Because right away, the rational mind wants to say, this isn't productive. This is a waste of time. I'm not getting anything done.
Right.
And the stillness. Are you kidding me? I gotta do things. I'm a mover. I'm a shaker. To be still, that's like a slow death. And I'm always amazed. I mean, that's even a part of Tony Robbins' story that a lot of people don't know is that it took him a very long time to embrace that stillness and silence because he was very much overweight for a period of time.
Mm.
And the stillness and silence he equated to almost like a slow death. That
Right.
contributed to his eating, that contributed to his overweight. So he created this powerful life outside of himself, but he then took it to the next level by embracing meditation, by embracing yoga, and by embracing all that to the point where I mean, the man can't be stopped now.
So what would you say was, we talk about the darkest moment, but then what would you say was the highlight? What was the transformative moment for you? Was there a one or two moments that you can clearly remember that were huge for you?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I am in Athens, Greece,
Hmm.
which is probably one of the most inaccessible places on earth. I mean, with all that stone and all that rock, they
Right.
did not have people with disabilities
Right.
in mind. I mean, since hosting the Olympic Games a number of years ago, they have gone through a transformation. It's much more accessible. But when I went there, it was just almost like confinement within confinement of being in my wheelchair.
Wow.
And it just, I got to the point where I couldn't even like move around the city. I couldn't do anything. So I was the first time in my life, Suzanne, where I just really wanted to check out. I didn't think about how I wanted to do this, but I basically had said to myself, even though I'm on this all expense paid trip, it's a perfect example about creating everything outside of you. I
Right.
have this all expense paid trip to travel around the world, to leave whenever I want, to come back whenever I want. And it's still, I am finding a way not to appreciate this.
Mm.
And so all of this just came to a head is that I can't, I don't know what it is that I'm looking for anymore, but it's not working. Who am I? Why am I here? All these questions started to come out and there was no answer. But I
Mm.
remember sitting in that hotel room in which I didn't leave for about 2.5, 3 days. I mean, I got food sent up to my place and everything, so I wasn't at that place. I still ate and so forth, but just tears would not stop coming. And I know what happened in that moment is that that 15-year-old boy began to grieve. He
Mm.
grieved over the loss of his legs. He grieved over not being able to play basketball anymore, not being able to play football, not being able to fulfill his dreams, which at that time in my life, at age 15, all I wanted to do was go to college in a few years and play college basketball and college football. That's all I wanted to do. Beyond that, I had no idea. So I
Wow.
grieved over what had been taken away from that boy. And then I grieved over the passing of my father because I remember then is that, I was a rock. I was there to help everyone else, but yet I did not allow myself to grieve. So I thought about everything that we had been through and so forth. And I let that 24-year-old boy grieve over the loss of his father and his
Wow.
passing and everything. So it was powerful. It's something that I hope that nobody else in the history of this world has to ever go through because it was painful.
Mm.
But like anything painful in my life is that in that moment, it feels like the end of the world.
Right.
But without that moment, I would never be where I am today. So in a way, it's an incredible gift and an incredible journey that I've been on.
So when you say you got to a point of possibly wanting to check out,
Yeah.
and you know, tell me a little bit more about that moment. Like what went through your mind in that moment?
It was just I wanted it to end. I
Mm.
wanted this roller coaster ride because it was almost like a roller coaster ride outside of myself.
Mm.
That no matter which turn I took, no matter what place I visited, no matter what country I went to, no matter what amazing person, I still was not in appreciation for this. It was almost like there were still roadblocks there. There was still stuff, and I didn't know. And it was almost like there was a voice that finally started speaking within me. And I
Mm.
was like, who am I? And this voice from deep within said, stop looking outside yourself. Go within. And it's almost like that's what the voice. And I literally thought it was like a housekeeper or something in a hotel who was in a closet or something.
Right.
And
Right.
I had been told before, and I wholeheartedly subscribe to it, is that there's a voice inside our minds and in our heads, and there's a voice inside our hearts. And when your mind's leading the way, it's about fear, disbelief, playing small in life. But when you live life from your heart, it's about courage, expansion, subscribing to that belief that anything is possible. And that was the voice that I had silenced all too long. I think I probably listened to it a little bit at age 15 because it had saved me, but I wasn't yet to fully subscribe to it and let it lead the way. Today I don't know any other way but for it to lead the way. And that's the only thing that keeps my mind in check. See, when my heart's leading the way, then my mind follows, and then it serves me in the form of creativity and imagination. But otherwise, is that I'm a prisoner. I'm a prisoner to it, and I don't want to be controlled by my mind. I don't want to be a prisoner.
I think that is so perfectly said, and I believe that we're all on a spiritual path, whether we know it or not. And I certainly know that you see this as a spiritual journey. What was sort of that moment that you felt not alone?
It was, you know what? It was pretty much soon after that. Is that when I left that hotel room, I started to. It was weird how everything seemed a little brighter, and it seemed like I started to see just people as mere reflections of me. And I know that sounds weird.
No,
but
not at all.
I started getting into like personal meditations, and I'd always really been kind to people, but I never saw people as a mere reflection. So it's almost like, and it was powerful because it's almost like I picked up on people's energies. It's like I could feel like someone's sadness, I could feel someone's happiness, I could feel someone's, and it was like because I was so new in understanding this within myself that it was almost felt like a pinball in a pinball machine. And I was bouncing all over the place, so then I needed to know how to ground myself, how to shield myself in a way from different energies. Not to say that I wasn't going to care or be there for people and so forth, but to protect myself, which is also very important. But then it was a few months later, I mean, I ended up getting together with my wife. I wasn't ready in the beginning when we had met to be with her shortly before I left on my first trip around the world by myself. And she wasn't ready to be with me. We both had some unresolved things to take care of in our lives, but it was like we were carrots dangled in front of one another. And then, yeah, to say you're not ready for us, you're not ready for one another now, but you know what, this is going to be one of your prizes on the other side of this journey. So she came into my life, and then we left on a trip. It took my second trip, her first trip around the world, went to 26 countries in 1 year. Wow. And I will never, one of those things that was so reaffirming, but it was a total surrender moment, is that, and I know this is going to be a big name to drop, Suzanne, but I had had a private visitation with His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
Wow. At
his home in Dharamsala in the foothills of northern India. And they told us maybe we'll have 5 minutes with him. He's very busy and so forth. But we ended up spending close to a half an hour with him. And the whole time, Suzanne, is that he is there sitting next to me. And he's just smiling. And from the moment he came in, and I didn't go in there with any intention. I didn't go in there with anything other than just wanting to absorb this man's energy, just to hear him speak, to just be in his presence. And from the moment he came in, like behind this door and everything, is that I started crying. I started crying. There were tears of sadness. There were tears of joy. And I'm thinking, like, what are you doing to me? And he had grabbed my hand. He held my hand, and he started stroking my hand like this, almost like with a thumb. And just stroking my hand. And all of a sudden, at one moment, I looked down and I saw his hand. And all of a sudden, the tears just started flowing even more. Is because I saw my father's hand. Oh, wow. And my father had these, I used to call him paws, because he was a florist and he had like powerful hands. And His Holiness's hand looked just like him. And all of a sudden, like, I kind of looked at him, and it's like in that moment, he knew what needed more healing in my life, and it was like another level of healing. And then something which just made me kind of laugh tears of happiness, like even more so than I was at different intervals of this meeting with him, is that he has this high-pitched laugh. A lot of people don't know this, is that like this high-pitched laugh that you would never expect from this big man. And he just started laughing at me, and then I'm crying even more. But it was one of those things that I felt like I wasn't alone. And it was also one of those moments in which, you know what, I wanted to strive to be more than I was, because I wanted to be in that place of just recognizing wholeheartedly where another person is at in his or her life in in a non-judgmental, unconditional manner. And that's exactly the way I felt when I was in the presence of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I said, wow, I mean, call it enlightenment, call it whatever you want. I said, I want to have that type of energy. I want to be in that place of non-judgment. I want to be in that place of unconditional love that he was with me in that moment. And I'm sure everybody else with whom he's in contact.
So how are you doing with that?
How am I doing with that?
Because that's a big goal to strive towards.
Yeah, how you do? I like that. So you got me laughing now. I'm doing well. What's very interesting is that I say now is that I've never been, even with all the challenges I have had in my life, is that I've never been in a better place than I am right here with you right now. And I say this because even with the challenges that are going on in my life, is that it's a moment for me. I don't have bad days anymore. I won't allow it to go that far. I reconnect, do whatever it takes, go to a place of gratitude, whatever it takes. Is that I have challenging moments though, but it's amazing is that there's a combination of immediately feeling those feelings, because I can't just resolve it. I can't just say, okay, this is the reason I'm figuring this way, and just suppress all those emotions. Ooh, do I get angry? Ooh, do I get sad? Ooh, do I cry? My kids think I'm like a sponge right now. Like I'm crying tears of joy in one moment and tears of sadness in another moment, but it's all good. And it's all because I've allowed myself almost this freedom to whatever it is that's going on in my life, to allow my emotions to come forward and to be there in the moment. And I mentioned them before, my children, is that again, no coincidences at all, is that my kids, my daughter's 10 going on about 15, but that's a whole nother interview, and my son's 8. And the combination of the two is that they're like my greatest teachers right now. My greatest teachers is that, wow, can they push my buttons? Yeah. And like my greatest button pushers are my greatest teachers. Yeah. And they're in the form of these pint-sized little punks right now, who are my angels as well, who I love. And it's just, I love it. I love it. They frustrate me like I wouldn't believe. I love them like that. I've loved no one else. Right. And it's just, it's all good. It's all good. But I'm like every single day, Suzanne, it's just running the gamut of emotions. Mm-hmm. And again, and I mean this because of where it's allowing me to be, it's all good. It's all good.
So how has all of these events in your life, the good, the not so good, you know, the breaking open moments, the life-changing moments, the pivotal people in your life, how has that all led to what you might believe is your soul's purpose here?
It's just every single moment, every single thing. And I don't say this because it sounds good. I know now when I share something with someone and it just comes up genuinely, rather than having to prove something or whatever it may be, when it's just, there's this knowingness. Mm-hmm. That comes up, is that I am convinced that every single moment, every single experience that I have had, good, I don't even say bad anymore, I don't say indifferent, I will say painful. Yeah. Every single moment has led me up to this wonderful moment that we're creating here. And there's a part of me that says basically like, well, why would I want to change anything? Any wrong move, any different thing, anything that might be different, is that we wouldn't be exchanging this moment right now. Right. And there's a full understanding of that. Again, it doesn't mean that I've been able to create everything I've wanted in my life. It doesn't mean that things go smoothly all the time. Right. There's just an understanding that there's a message, there's a reason for everything, and it's just part of that purpose, part of my purpose. And now being able to speak to audiences in so many places, to coach people. I'm running a foundation now that's training, mentoring, and placing people with disabilities and military veterans for rewarding careers in financial services. I mean, it's like I realize that my purpose in life is to serve, and but I also understand, and I know you know this all too well, is that service needs to begin at home. Yeah. And I don't even mean with my daughter. I don't mean with my son. I don't mean with my wife. Mm-hmm. It needs to begin with me. And that almost like rewinds the tape of back when I was like 24 years old, is realizing that, you know what, that first title that we came into this world with was individual.
Right.
And that no matter how many titles we've added in our lives over the years, is that that individual is still there, and so needed to be nurtured on a daily basis before we can actually really give everything that we want to give to other people. So I understand that. And when I'm not caring for myself in the way that I need to be caring for myself, oh, wow, do I get the messages quickly? And do I have to learn some painful lessons quickly now? That's how much it happens. So I realized, you know what, the more that I take care of myself, and it doesn't have to be time consuming, but the more I take care of myself, the more that I can do for others and really fulfill my soul's purpose.
So what is, you said the message, what would you say the message is to, let's say, people out there that are struggling with adversity, struggling with painful experiences, struggling with limitation? What would you say that message that you've learned through all of your own adversity, what would you say it is?
Absolutely, and it's tough because I'm going to bring up some words right now that I think we all know, but whether or not we practice them is a whole nother story. I bring up the word surrender.
Yeah,
Is that for the most
huge.
part, you bring up the word surrender, you think of a white flag. Most people would equate that to weakness.
Right.
Now, when I surrender, and I want to really help those people who are watching this right now, is that when I say surrender, I mean, like, you know what, allowing people to help you.
Right.
We all too often want to be an island and say, I got to figure this out on my own. And even in my darkest hour, is that yes, I was isolated in those moments. But up until that moment and immediately following, I had so many teachers, so many mentors, so many people in my life who I've allowed on a much deeper level to come into my life to help me to make sense of things. And then all of a sudden, I'll take it back to the drawing board and process it. So surrender, putting up the white flag and saying, hey, you know what, I don't have to figure this thing called life out on my own. But then also, which is huge, is letting go. Letting go is that there's so much we want to have control over things. And the best way I describe this is that think about if you just control your breath and you just thought about every inhalation and every exhalation. Okay, inhale, exhale. You would probably hyperventilate. At some point, you just have that intention to breathe.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, guess what? Is that you've let go.
Yes.
You've let go of the outcome. And that's huge. That one of the biggest things that I've learned through this is that the difference between expectation and intention. Now, a lot of people are going to say, you know what, I have an expectation. This is the way I want my life to go. And I get it. I understand that. But expectation is basically an indirect way of trying to control a situation.
Right.
An indirect way of trying to control people, in which we don't want to do. We try to do, but we're never successful. So you might say, okay, Scott, so how do I get what I want in my life? How do I do this? And I said, well, guess what? Intentions are just as powerful. But here's the key, is that then you have a detachment from the outcome.
Yes.
It's like you want everything to turn out this way. Have that focus, have that passion, have that sight in mind, but knowing full well that there's going to be a detachment from the outcome where at some point you say to yourself, okay, I need to let go of this. I need to let it breathe. It's almost like planting a seed. You don't dig it up every moment. You allow it to grow and nurture and do whatever it needs to do. Is that you need to detach from the outcome and saying to yourself, and this is putting such a trust in this process and a trust in the universe, is that whatever the outcome may be, it's what's in my soul's best interest.
Yes.
And that's huge.
Even if it's different than the way we want it to look.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's so tough. And again, we're dealing with, and you know this all too well, is that years and years of being conditioned a certain way to say we have to be in control of things. We have to line things up a certain way. So there's a lot of deprogramming that takes place here. There's a lot of deconditioning and so forth. And sometimes you're going to find, you know what, this process moves very quickly. And that's great. But other times, you know what, just stay with it because it's going to take some time. But there's this knowingness. I always say the mind thinks and the heart knows. Again, that's why I try to be in my heart, is that there's a knowingness with everything that I'm doing, is that, you know what, yes, this is where I'm supposed to be going. Yes, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And there's that element of trust. There's this element of trust.
So huge, Scott. I can't tell you. I mean, most people, because, you know, I work with a lot of clients and so often I see us so stuck in our self-limiting beliefs and what we can't do and focusing on what we don't want as opposed to what we do want. And I always tell people, because when you're talking about this, I'm thinking about co-creation and co-creating with spirit. And I always say that if you do 49%, God will handle the other 51.
Wow, I like that. I
You
like
know,
that.
and I think that that's sort of what you're saying by intention and then letting go, because the outcome is really, I don't even think, I think we think so much smaller than what it ultimately could be. I think,
Absolutely.
that, God's plans could be so much bigger than what we could even dream of for ourselves.
Well,
So,
what she said. It's funny that you say that. Is that I was talking to a group of middle school students yesterday, and I
mhm.
was telling them to go after their dreams, and then I tell them because they know through my story, my dreams didn't come true, and I tell them I say, listen, I guarantee you this: go after your dreams, go after everything that you absolutely want, but knowing full well that if your dream doesn't come true, I promise you is that there is a bigger and brighter dream waiting for you. And I think exactly what you're talking about now is that us thinking that we have the ideal dream in mind, we have the ideal life in mind, and sometimes it does turn out a little bit like that. But you know what? In terms of being even more glorious, even more magnificent,
Right,
is that's where guess what? We, in a way, have
right.
no idea how big and marvelous and awesome that this world can possibly be
And
for.
on one hand, that's so incredibly exciting, and on the other hand, that's so frightening.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But
Because
that's
again,
why I
we
think
want
it's,
to have control. We want to
yeah,
get back to having some control over
yeah,
this. And you
yeah.
know what? It's almost like just kind of like hang on to that heart and just like enjoy the ride. I have to say one more thing. It came up to me as you were talking though, is that I think another key part of this, I mentioned surrender and I talk about letting go. It was something that is so huge for me, and I'm in a place of it right now, just with the opportunity that you've given me today to be, is in a place of gratitude.
Yeah.
And I heard, it was about 2 years ago, that somebody said for every one thing that is legitimately, understandably challenging about your life, and maybe going wrong in your life, and whatever it may be, for every one thing that's not going well in your life, there are 10,000 things, at least 10,000 things that are awesome about your life.
Right.
And it's just choosing. Our greatest power as human beings is our power to choose, is just choosing to go to a place of gratitude. And no matter what is going on in your life, to focus on, you know what, what's awesome. Not just what's good about my life. What is awesome about my life right now? And that could take any dark moment, any dark day, anything, and bring light to it. I promise you that. I guarantee you that.
So, how, if anybody here is watching this, how can they connect with you? How can they find you? Because I think you're just so amazing. So, how can they?
It's just mere reflections of one another. Weren't you listening? Come on, come on.
Exactly,
There
exactly.
you go.
So, how can they find you if they want to?
Absolutely. Well, you have to have the intention. No, I'm just kidding. It's no expectations here.
Yes,
No,
exactly.
I think the best way is because then you can find me on all the social medias to go to my website and it's scottchesney.com, SCOTTCHESNEY.com. And again, whether it be Twitter, LinkedIn, however it is that you want to connect with me, we can make it happen from there.
Great. Scott, thank you so much. Really,
No, thank you.
I am very grateful for
We
this moment.
co-created this moment. Isn't it amazing?
We did. I knew it was going to happen. I knew, as opposed to I thought. I knew it was going to happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a blessing. Thank you.